Lemon Amiga presents a Playguide video review. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Hey there, welcome to another Lemon Amiga Playguide and review. In this week's episode we'll be checking out Simulcra, developed by Graft Gold and published by Microstyle in 1990. The game opens with a very similar to Paradroid introduction sequence with a very similar font and a great theme by Jason Page. By pressing the fire button we can enter the game itself. Each level opens with a map showing us the level unfolding, and it's our job to clear that map of generators which generate those red force fields you can see flashing on the screen. Between here and those generators a number of enemies will appear and fire missiles towards us and try and blow us up. This is an attack on a computer known as the Simulcra, and it's our job to destroy that computer from the inside. The computer has once again gained sentience and is now generating flying machines and all kinds of killer robots to try and stop us from blowing it up. Luckily we drive the SRV, the Surface Reconnaissance Vehicle, and by powering that up there we can collect items and that upgrades our vehicle to enable flight. Each enemy will leave behind an upgrade known as a plus pod, and here we are, this is the first generator. If we hold down that fire button that will launch a missile towards that thing if we've collected the homing missiles, and we shall take a look at the instrument panel a little later. But where you can see that generator is now down, allowing us to fly through to the outer side of this matrix and gain access to another generator further on down in the level. But at this stage it's probably a wise idea to clear all the enemies away, and once they are dead they stay dead. Periodically we'll also find hangars, and inside here we'll find one of our own ships. Sometimes that will give us an extra life, but sometimes that will only recharge our energy, our shields should I say, all the way up to full. And as long as we have lives or shields then we should be able to progress in this game. By pushing forward on the joystick and then pulling back we can take off at will, and that will take off at the speed that we are travelling when we are going in the forward direction. So if we only move slowly and pull backwards that will take us off very slowly, and if we are moving at full speed and pull back that will jet us off into the sky. And that's an extra life there which puts us up to 6, and those battle tanks aren't too hard to knock out if the player sticks to the road and takes those down from a distance. That will hopefully mean that those objects are very much less dangerous at arm's length, and then we can finish those guys off, scoop up any rewards. Although those rewards, those power pods there, won't last forever, so we have to jump across and grab those before they disappear. We can also find bonus tokens, those pyramids, which I seem to have crashed straight through. That didn't give me any score, but if you shoot those pyramids that often does give score. And now that we've taken down those generators, now we can explore this level, and as there is no time limit we can take down those enemies at our leisure. By simply staying put, our lasers will be guided eventually to those airborne menaces, so we don't have to take those down by taking off, and sometimes holding down the fire button again will supposedly release a fire and forget missile which only locks on target if you are actually on target, and it won't actually heat seek and fire and forget like it says on the label. But apart from that, you can see we've just been destroyed, too many hits on the forward shield, and it's all over. If you noticed, our shield is depleting. It's probably a good idea to try to avoid any more forward attacks, and we can take a number of hits before our shield depletes. And again, it's probably best to collect BAT symbols or those ship symbols which recharge our shield to the full. You can see I just collected a BAT, but we are already full, so let's get on with this level. In this game, it's always worth exploring all those hidden sections, and collecting yet another life gives us back those 6 lives that we lost. And just hopping over those boundaries there, it's always important to clear away the level, not only from a score point of view, but it makes traversing the levels so much easier. You may also notice there are towers periodically scattered along the Simulcra matrix, the energy matrix, and they will fire some kind of missile towards us, which aren't amazingly sharp, and they will not kill us on contact. Nothing kills us outright in this game unless we have no shields remaining, but they will fire some kind of weedy missile, so sometimes it's good to get rid of those defences along with those generators. As you can see, I like to play Simulcra as a driving game and edge my way forward, hopefully collecting more of those batteries, maybe not so much of those SUs because we do not want to be speeded up so much. And there you go, that's an energy recharge. If you can do that and keep the enemy at arm's length, then hopefully you'll be able to get far in this game. And again, without a time limit, the player can spend a very long time playing this game. We're going to play this for around about 30 minutes, but we aren't going to get very far, perhaps up to level 5 or 6 out of the 30 levels that there are in this game. I'm not quite sure if there are any passwords to help you skip those levels, but I should only hope that there are, given the fact that it can take half an hour just to get through a few levels. Each level is practically identical to this, except for the matrix is different and you'll have to navigate those, and the same variety of enemies appear on every level, although sometimes those can be packed out, and sometimes navigating around through these matrices isn't very easy. Taking a look at the instrument panel, we can see the instrument panel is quite diverse. Starting there at the bottom left corner, the generators remaining, we have 2 left to destroy. We are on level 1. We have a number of fire and forget missiles there, and our targeting display is active. That will mean you see SU there, that will give us an indication of what those targets are. We have also collected an ECM, which I'm not sure whether you have to activate that with the F3, but that is there as a keyboard command. And we have 6 lives remaining. The BAT batteries indicates that we have shield power, and collecting those bats to recharge our shield is definitely a minimum requirement in this game. You can see the local radar that we've collected, RAD. You can also see in the bottom corner, if we press F1, we can toggle the radar. No idea what VGN or VGH is. We start the game with one of those. And solid fuel booster, that's basically our flight mode, and the more fuel we have in there, the more we can stay aloft. We can also find SU tokens, which will speed us up, and we can even retract our wings with the F4 key. As soon as we find and destroy the final generator, that's level over. hopefully you can hear the range of sound effects in this game really help to create a great atmosphere and battle scenario. You don't always know what all those effects and different sounds mean, and I've certainly no idea what those little noises mean in every case, but those sampled sounds add something to this game, and without those this game might be a little bare. But there is no music or anything like that, and that doesn't spoil this game one little bit. The only thing that does spoil this game slightly is if we are playing this on an Amiga 500. You can see this footage was recorded on an Amiga 3000 25 MHz, and again the Amiga 3000 loves games like this and Zool and things like that, and of course they would be much smoother with a good CPU, but on the 500 it's still playable and maybe not as slow as Zool was. And so this game has been very well coded, very well polished, and has been optimized as much as possible to allow the basic 500 to still play this. It's also still very playable with an A1200 and fast RAM. Box at the top of the screen will alight red when an airborne attack is sighted, and it will also warn us with another sound effect. So sometimes when those airborne guys get a lock on, it can be wise to stay on the move, and again take down those towers, and anything which moves is a top priority. The tanks in this game are a little bit weedy, and we can also fly away from any enemies should we get into trouble. Again, at this early stage, it's very easy to find those generators, knock those out, and because we can collect those missiles, it's also great to hold down the fire button and knock those generators out with one missile. Although, again, I would have preferred if those targeted missiles actually locked on to airborne targets. Sometimes the flight takeoff mechanic is slightly unnerving to the amateur player, and sometimes driving to your destination like a vehicle is once again safer than trying to hop over these gaps, because if you try too fast to drive over those, well, you might fly off into the sky and crash into lots of enemies. So sometimes the art of hopping over these gaps is a great skill worth mastering, just like that. And it is a very good skill worth mastering because it will be called into use later on. But we cannot fall through this panel and fall through into space and lose energy. We'll simply bounce off open space if we find that, and so we won't lose anything by going offline. But it's great to explore these things. Unfortunately, I think even at this early stage, level 2 out of 30, it's still very easy to get lost. Luckily, we can press F1 and F2 and bring up a number of maps, and that should hopefully save us from doing that. It's also worth remembering that we cannot fire through those tokens, and look at that, the homing missile actually locked on for a change to that tank. So sometimes you cannot fire through those pods, and it's a good job to collect those. And there you go, that's another generator destroyed. That just leaves us one more to find. And now the generators are down again, we can take off and fly around this level, given all of that fuel that we still have left. But once again, collecting all these pods in order and getting rid of these enemies is still a matter of staying down at ground level and not making full use of that flight ability. At this stage in the game, playing the game definitely depends on taking one's time and playing this strategically. Now we have some damage on that front shield, we have 6 lives and we only have 1 generator to find. Surely it is best to pick off these enemies slowly and not rush out into the action. we can see on that rather obscure map that we only have one section to get to complete this level, and that's enclosed in a force field of its own. We tried to fly in there, but unfortunately didn't make it. So let's try again to navigate this level, and unfortunately there is no north and south on the radar, and so not knowing up from down is sometimes a little bit of a problem. But here we go, these are the last defences hopefully before we get to that last generator. Let's knock that out and let's hopefully complete this level. From now on, things become a little more serious, and now we are under attack as soon as we begin. So we have to be either on the move or take out those towers pretty smartly. You can see they've already dented our shield, and so perhaps sticking around this spot isn't so helpful to our chances of survival. So we move bravely on, and hopefully we will get, perhaps at random or perhaps pre-programmed, a number of pickups. So even at this stage we are looking for a BAT or some kind of health or life top up, and adventuring into space like this is great, but again it isn't necessary to complete this game by defeating every single alien. Sometimes you have to survive. Let's venture bravely on into the main complex, and yet again let's not risk any flight maneuvers, seeing as looking at that instrument panel we actually lose all our flight abilities as soon as we die. So we're going to have to build those all up again. So we do have full shield and we do have a fighting chance on this level, and we haven't got a clue where we are because this level and this game is so huge. But luckily at this stage, at least the game holds the player's hand and we are never too far away from one of those generators. In Simulcra there is always something to think about, there is never a dull moment, and you can always travel and collect anything that you require by backtracking on the level and destroying enough enemies. Now the problem is that this game in general is a little repetitive, simply because the levels don't really change and the enemies don't really change from level to level, and going through 30 of these levels is a little bit of a slog. I'd say for the first 5 or 10 is quite bearable, and the player can take their time and get far in this game, and it is a great feeling to get far in this game and be rewarded with extra lives and whatever else we find in these caches. So let's pile in there, let's see what we find. Extra energy, and well, 2 lots of extra energy. But unfortunately those energy barriers will sap the shield, and if we collide into those once again by risking the flight maneuver, yet again we are at death's door, having been on the verge of extra life potential just a moment ago. So unfortunately this game does rob the player as soon as they investigate the flight mode, and that is a serious potential flaw in this game. You have to take it easy, and if you do risk those things, well, you better make sure that those risks pay off, because it can be tricky. The controls are amazingly difficult. It's the usual flight control mode. You push forward and then back, and then forward again to dip, and back to rise, and things like that. But the problem does come with the fact that these levels are confined because of those energy barriers, and it's only at the very end of the level, when those barriers have disappeared, do we even get the slightest confidence to try that flight mode. But here we go, continuing with that level. We still have 4 generators to find, so each level will become more difficult, of course, and sometimes more complex. And there aren't really any puzzles in this game. No, all you have to do is find those generators, find the best place to hit those, and take those out. So let's slide around this level, and once again refusing to use the map there. Sometimes the exploration is the best thing, and like most shooters, if we find new enemies, that's usually a place where we need to be. So we can see new enemies there, let's take them out. And taking out enemies never gets boring, so at least that is a stimulus in this game. And once again, the action is hugely packed. The player is never left on their own with nothing to think about, even if they venture back into the old territory. So whilst you see me bumbling around completely oblivious to the map feature, I'll just tell you a little more about this game. It was developed by Graft Gold, and Graft Gold was Stephen Turner, the founder of Graft Gold, and he coded this game along with his famous co-coder Andrew Braybrook. The team are probably most famous for Iridium and Paradroid, although I quite like Fire and Ice as well. They were aided in this game by Darren Etienne, and Dominic Robinson also went on to create The Killing Cloud in 1991 and B-17 Flying Fortress. So going on there to create great flight sims after working on this. And the graphics in this game were created by John Cumming. You may remember John Cumming created the graphics for Rainbow Islands, but before that he also worked on Stunt Car Racer in 1989, Jeff Cramond's classic, also appearing on the Microstyle published label, same as this. So you may notice some similarities in the graphics between this and Stunt Car Racer. Most obviously the wedge shape of our main character is a little like the wedge shape of the other cars in Stunt Car Racer. And the music in this game was created by Jason Page, our old friend Jason Page, who's been in so many games, it's unbelievable. And you may remember he created the music for the recent System 3 release of Putty Squad, which was amazing, and he also created lots of memorable Amiga themes. So let's return back to the action and let's see what's happening. It looks like we only have 1 generator to find, and it looks like we are still in the thick of the usual action. Perhaps the most annoying aspect of this game is getting blown up when we are so near the exit, and we don't know where that last generator may be, but I can tell you we are very close, and it doesn't take very much to go before we get that thing out of the way and get off this level. Only a few sentry guard towers to go, and that is basically it. You can see sometimes it takes a few attempts to get a run up into the launch, and yes, there is a launch key available, and if you press the F5 key, hopefully that will launch us into the atmosphere, but doing it with the joystick is a little unnerving sometimes because we don't want to take off too quickly or we'll end up colliding with the sides and bouncing around like pinball. So sometimes it's wise to once again stick to that floor and knock out all those enemies. Luckily, most of those don't fire back, and you can see these remote drones there. They might collide with our craft, but apart from damaging our shield, I don't think those pose much of a threat. And clearing away these easy gun towers, or whatever they may be, is quite easy. So yet again, the game holds the player's hand and doesn't let them stray too far away from the main action. Despite its sometimes obvious drawbacks and flaws, sometimes I think this game deserves much respect because it is so easy to get into. Yes, the player will get far, no matter how novice that they are, if they understand the basics of this game. And if they don't, well, they can take precautions and not fly, of course, but for the most part, it's a matter of exploring tentatively around these levels, and that's all there is to it. But again, I do have respect for this game. I think it's a great polygon-driven game. It's very fast and very smooth. I think it's just as fast as Zool that we reviewed the other week. And it's great to see fast 3D games appearing on the Amiga. This certainly doesn't feel like the very best, but then again, that's only because we daren't use the flight mode in case we lose all our energy and explode on impact. You can see our forward shield has already taken a battering, so we can't afford any more forward hits just like that. Now we are down to having a wide open gap there. So let's explore again, hopefully finding those batteries. But it's great that we do have a shield. This game would be impossible if it didn't. So, well, look at that, more radar towers, and perhaps the ECM saves us from those, but perhaps it doesn't. You can see the map ever expands there, and it's pretty difficult, you can see, to find where we are. As the map stretches itself into the background at that very odd angle, we have to use a microscope to find out what we find there. We are right on the shoulder of something. Maybe we have to skip across to the next section, and then that reveals a huge runway, hopefully, to the final generator. Well, let's see. Let's see if we can put any of that into practice with one life remaining. You saw me firing at nothing there, trying to preempt those enemies, and if we are in the vicinity of enemies, probably that's a good thing, because as soon as they appear on the horizon, we can knock those out. And again, if they are at distance, then that makes them less dangerous. And these things have no idea what they are or what they appear to do, but we don't appear to be losing any shield because of those, and perhaps they just give extra bonus score. It's great that all those enemies will drop items, and just like Guardian that we reviewed, that 3D performer, we can always collect those, and it's a great feeling to upgrade our vehicle, although not a great feeling because we always seem to have every item under the sun except for when we die, because then, well, we have to collect everything back up again. See, without much flight capability, we can't really pull off any amazing maneuvers because we're still trying to collect those items, and we don't have any torpedoes either. We always seem to have an abundance of those, and maybe I should be using more of those in this game. But let's first of all collect those energy crystals. That's the bat. Do we lose any energy? Do we collect that? Do we actually manage to maneuver to that? No, it doesn't look like it does. So our shield there is at a premium, and that's the way it's going to stay. So once again, the flight dynamics ruining what could have been an easy opportunity for us to recharge that shield. So let's line up those guys, let's not rush in headlong, and wow, we managed to get that bat out of nowhere. So perhaps those things are at random, and it's great when we get a recharged shield. But what we really want to find at this stage is more generators, and then that means we can continue with that level. One way is to follow these energy lines, and that is what I'm doing at the moment. If we follow those, surely at some stage they will lead to the generators, and again we don't fly around, but I think in this corner surely there must be a generator, and here it is. That will try to fire its way towards us, but luckily we can take that on, and hopefully it will reward us with hopefully extra lives, and look at that, some more energy. As usual, it would be very easy to criticise this game for things and features that it doesn't have, but redundancies like these globes spinning around, they just give us bonus points and bonus items, of course, just like every other item and just like every other craft in this entire game. But they are redundant, and it would be great to get rid of these in a specific order and collect a puzzle, or be warped into another place, or to take part in a sub-game where we take on and fly around a huge mothership. But again, the flying aspect, unless we want to take off and attack those flying enemies head on, or unless, well, let's try that actually. Well, it's certainly difficult, but that will give us a nice reconnaissance of the area, and now we know where the generator is, hopefully we can land somewhere near that. And just like finding a parking space in the middle of London, sometimes we have to park way outside of the area and walk all the way back to where we wanted to go in the first place. So here we go, this is somewhere in the area of that generator. Our rear shield is depleted, and so we'll have to be careful. And perhaps being careful is the art of this game. You can see at this point we don't get too many extra lives, and that's perhaps because we haven't explored too much of these levels, and we haven't really explored them because we haven't had the confidence to fly. So now that we have one generator remaining and a nice launch pad there, if you remember the map there was a nice long runway to the final generator. Let's not risk flying into those guys, let's just make our way down, and hopefully with zero shields virtually remaining, let's hope we can survive, and let's see if we can make it to that next level. There is always a wow factor when we get to see that next map, but in practice it's the same old level, just rearranged in a brand new order. And that didn't seem to affect the scores of this game. And let's take a look at those scores. The lowest score, obviously, it came from the Lemon Amiga website. They give this thing currently 76%. Amiga Action gave this game 78%. Amiga Computing gave Simulcra 79%, Zero Magazine gave it 85%, Zap64 gave it 88%, C Amiga gave Simulcra 90%, and a Screen Star and CMBG Magazine gave this game 93%, and a Hit Award. And I think, well, that gives an average rating of 8.5 out of 10, and I think this game deserves at least an 8. Maybe not a 7.5, but at least an 8, maybe not even an 8.5 like the average score, because it is too repetitive, and we are struggling now to find extra lives and extra motivation to complete this game, and we are literally flying around it trying to find what we are looking for. Well, 5 generators, and we're not having any luck whatsoever. So sometimes I think this game is a little too vast, a little too familiar for its own good, and I think to some extent they could have introduced these enemies level by level and introduced a puzzle element. Maybe a mothership wouldn't have gone down amiss either. And as I say, I'm not quite sure whether we can use passwords in this game. I would hope so with 30 levels, since we are on level 5 now after half an hour. and according to the CU specs it would take 24 hours to complete this game. Unfortunately we do not have that long, and so that's game over. The high score system also offers up some great music, and I really do appreciate the music in this game. It's certainly better than Super Monaco GP with its sombre tone. But apart from the great music and the great atmosphere, I think this game could have been just a little more. And I'll see you again in another Playguide review sometime soon.